So thank you for joining me, Rachelle. I have Rachelle from How to Live Slow, and she's going to be sharing with us how she lives an intentional life using slow living. So welcome, Rachelle.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh no, thank you so much for making the time to come on and share with us some of the tips around slow living and how you came about slow living. So maybe start with about your morning routine. Do you have a sort of a morning ritual or morning routine that you have for your family?
I do. I think, I love the idea of calling it a ritual because I feel that routines are really boring. And so they're really hard to stick to. And I'm someone who kind of rebels against the idea of having a routine. So I actually have ritualized my morning in the sense of um, a lot of the stuff that I struggle with is not having quality time with my kids. So by making morning routines into rituals, that increases my sort of quality time with them. So we have fun little things like when we make breakfast, we have certain bowls that we use, and a certain words that we say or whatever, but just to make it a little bit more fun. And we have a toothbrushing song and things like that. But I know that that's probably not really what you mean, but
No, definitely, because I'm sure that helps
yeah.
for your children just to, they know what to expect, isn't it? It's about that expectations.
Yeah. And I feel like as a parent, like the morning and the night routines are some of the times when things can get really like high stress. Why won't they get their shoes on? And nobody's got their drink bottle ready. And where's your hat? And, come on out the door and all of that. But I think when you bring in a little bit of ritual to those little things, it can make it really lovely. And as a mum, having a morning routine that's really elaborate with meditation and journaling and everything, that's lovely, but it's not always as possible.
Yeah.
So I just like to do from that point of view, I like to wake up. I follow Rhiannon Colarossi. She has this really great thing she calls the positive action plan. And she just wakes up, and it's really easy to do because you just answer 3 questions and you can write them down or just in your head. And it's just, how do I want to feel today? What am I grateful for? And what do I want to achieve today? And that's just sets you up for such an amazing day, just setting that intention.
Yeah, that positive mindset, isn't it? It makes such a difference.
Yeah.
So what about this year? Have you found any, like a little bit more to adjust to with school, having school routine as well, having a school drop off?
Oh, I have, yeah. So I have been saying, because my son obviously in prep now 5 days a week. And since I've had him, I've only had sort of 3 days a week of work. So this is a whole new thing, mainly for me. Like, he's loving it. But this whole idea of doing something 5 days a week is a little bit of a culture shock, I think, for me. And also we're early risers. So the kids were going to daycare at sort of 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning because we're up at 5. But now we're sort of sitting around a little bit more. We've actually got more time in the morning, which I'm sure will change as they get older and start sleeping in.
Yeah, but that's great. And I know some of my other clients, I found the same thing. They've said the same thing. Because we would just get ready and go when we're ready to drop off. There's no set time when it comes to daycare, and even some particular kinders are the same. Whereas now having that set sort of time, things have to change and adjust.
Yeah.
So what about yourself then? What do you like to do in your free time, or something that we don't know about you that you'd like to share?
Oh, okay. So I'm a bit of a learning nerd. So I have a bit of an issue with how many books I've collected. So I feel like a really indulgent thing for me to do if I've got some free time is to actually just sit down and put my phone down and read some of my book, whether that's a fiction book, which I've recently gotten more into fiction, or an Australian fiction. There's some really great Australian authors that I love to support and follow their work. Or like learning things. Like, I actually am learning Spanish at the moment, and it's only through an app. But it's actually really good, and I love it. I do it quite a lot. So one day I want to go and do the Camino to Santiago, which you probably know of, but not a lot of people have heard of. It's a 800-kilometer walk. It's a pilgrimage, a spiritual pilgrimage or a religious pilgrimage. So I'm trying to learn Spanish so that one day I can go and do that.
Oh, what a beautiful goal. Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure now having that Spanish, fulfills that need of love of learning, so that
Yeah.
you can then also enjoy those fiction books.
Yeah.
Have you found that you like, is it audio books or is it physical books you'd prefer?
Oh, so when I go for a walk, I listen to an audio book, or a podcast. But yeah, I love actually the pages of a real book when I'm sitting down. Yeah, for a reading session. Yeah.
And I'm sure you're the same, having a business online, you spend enough time on your computers that it's nice to actually have a book, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. For me, like scrolling Instagram feels like work now. So it doesn't actually relax me like you would think.
Yeah. So tell us about your business, How to Live Slow.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so How to Live Slow. Oh, well, it started as a podcast. I mean, I just love the ideas of slow living. I probably started out as a minimalist and realized that I really probably, slow living just goes a bit deeper for me. And I decided that I wanted to share sort of, my story about how I got into slow living and how others can do it as well. And I'm also a life coach. So of course I feel like I want to work with mums to help them. I really struggle a lot with the pull to be doing things all the time. And as a mum, like I feel like, we need to be slowing down so that we can be there for our kids and, tune into our intuition and really be aware of everything that's going on. And I just feel like we're just heading for burnout when we try to do it all at once. And we deserve to live a little slower. So that's all kind of the basis of my business is I've got a couple of programs and courses where I help mums learn how to live slower so that they can actually really enjoy their life and enjoy that process. So I know being home with little kids can sometimes feel really heavy or hard. And also because you're going slower and you just feel like you're not achieving the things that you want to do. And so living slow can sometimes actually be a bit challenging for a really high achieving woman. So I've got some really good strategies around how to start to enjoy that process and to see it for what it is, which is a really beautiful experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And even the podcast, tell us about your podcast and how that came about then.
So once upon a time when I first had my first son, I actually had a YouTube channel. Like I was a family blogger or family vlogger because I made family videos of all our travels and our daily lives. And I did that, and I still do that sometimes, but I had a weekly video for at least 3 or 4 years. And then I thought, you know what, I enjoy sharing what we're doing as a family, but I actually really want to, talk about my experience of motherhood. And so I started this other channel on YouTube called How to Live Slow. And then I came across, so I was talking a bit about like what that would, mean. I made videos about slow living and motherhood. And then someone said to me, you know what, I really think that as a mum, most mums are looking for something that they can listen to rather than watch. People, mums don't go down YouTube rabbit holes like we used to. So why don't you do a podcast? And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And that's actually, I think I'm coming up to a year now. And it's actually been amazing because it's meant that I can have a lot of different guests and a lot of different perspectives on different areas of life. And it's really fascinating how so many of the guests that I have who may not even talk about slow living actually come back to slow living. Like I've had you on the podcast, and I've had people talking about birth and physio and all sorts of amazing topics, even relationships. And it's really fascinating to see how that all can relate and be enhanced by slow living. So I love my podcast. It's really one of my favorite parts of my business.
Oh, and I loved it. That I don't even know how I stumbled across. You must have been interviewed by somebody else, and that's how I was like, oh, I love this, and started listening. So I do. I really enjoy the short episode. It's not like long amount of time, so it's usually perfect for when I'm driving somewhere that I get a whole episode in, and just really inspiring people that you interview on topics that it's not just you think slow living, but it's encompassing the whole concept of slow living, which people probably don't probably don't know enough about it. You know, I feel like it's getting out there, but it's not maybe as much as, I mean, they might have heard of the minimalist, but not slow living as you talk about it, which is, it's something that we can all, you know, aspire to as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's much easier than you think, really, to start living a little bit slower. Yeah.
Definitely. This 5-day lockdown has definitely helped to reinforce that, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So what about some health tips or wellness tips or even slow living tips that you'd like to share with the audience would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's really important to define slow living in a sense. So to me, slow living, like a lot of people just assume it means that you just don't want to do anything and you want to like stay home a lot and say no to everything. And it's actually not that. It doesn't mean that you're lazy. It doesn't mean that you're boring or that you're too introverted or not social or whatever. It actually has a lot to do with understanding what your values are. So if you say that your number one value is family, and then have a look at how you're actually spending your time and making adjustments, so that if your number one value is family, but you never actually cultivate those relationships or spend time with your family because, you know, you're working or you're doing all other things, keeping yourself busy, keeping the house clean, whatever it is, you know, what we do as mums, actually what you want to be doing is spending more quality time with the kids. Well, how can you implement that a little bit? And that's why, like we're at the start of our conversation, I said about rituals and changing your routines into little rituals for those quality connection times. So that's what slow living is. It's really a realignment of your life. I kind of think about it as like, you know how people talk about organic food is actually real food? To me, slow living is actually real living. So it's taking away all that stuff that we think we have to do and unsticking ourselves from the stories about the shoulds and the hustle and the achievement of external stuff, and really looking at, well, what would I regret more, you know, in the future, and what do I need to do to change that? And it's about holding boundaries, right? So learning how to say no so that you can say yes to the right things. And I think people think of boundaries again as being ways that you block other people out, but they're actually just rules of connection or rules of engagement for you so that you feel the most energized. So when you get 100 million invites and your kids want to do 100 million sports and everything, you've got to filter, because you've got really strong boundaries. You've got to filter so that you can allocate, all right, I'm going to see this person because I really want to see that person and engage deeply with them. And I don't want to get there and be like constantly thinking, I've got to get going to the next thing, so that, you know, you can see that person for the period of time until you're ready to leave, not because you have to. So there's a couple of different things in there, but it's just, it's about like being certain of who you are and what you really want out of life, and then going towards that as much as you can.
Yeah, I love that. How defining your values. And definitely over the weekend, having this 5-day lockdown, it was like, I felt like, you know, we'd just been getting back into work and the kids' activities and things. And just, it was great to stop and go, hang on a minute, we haven't really spent that much time together. And, you know, just being able to put my work on hold for 3 days to be able to do some remote learning, and even just see, you know, the development of my son over the past, you know, 12 months since the last, or even 6 months since the last lockdown. So what would you say, though, that you find that women that you attract into your courses, what sort of usually their hesitation and their sort of, you know, their reasoning for not living slow, or you know, what is the boundary, that's what I'm trying to think of, the boundary that generally you find?
I find that for a lot of mums, because I do attract, you know, my work is mainly with mums, a lot of mums, it's this thing called the perfect mother myth. And it's all these stories, all this socialization that we've had over the years, you know, even from things like Disney movies and what we see on the news and advertisements about cleaning products and everything. And also the stories that we've raised with, that we need to be achieving certain things. So the perfect mother myth is this story that we have in our collective mind about what we need to be doing to be a good mum. And there's this whole list of things. It's like being a good mum, working and being successful at work, you know, keeping on top of the house, having a good relationship with our husband, seeing or partner, seeing our friends, being a good daughter, being a good person, all of these things. And it's a real hard thing to let go of some of that identity. And we constantly butt up against this perfect person like idea. And it's really hard to unhinge, disconnect ourselves from that myth and start to look at, well, what would be good enough and what is actually important to me and what can I let go of? And is keeping the house immaculately clean and picking up every toy after the kids every day the best use of my time? And the best, is that actually being a good mum or a perfect mum? And is trying to achieve being perfect actually serving me or my family? So I think that's where a lot of us get really stuck at the start. Yeah,
definitely. Do you find that they're generally mums who have multiple children, or it's their first child and they're realizing what life's going to be like with a child?
I actually think that the moment that it hits home the most is when the mum is about to return to work.
Okay, yeah.
Because obviously, you're home with your first baby or even your second baby, you've got, everything sorted in that part. And then you think, well, how am I going to do all of that and go to work and do all the other organising that needs to happen?
Yeah.
And I think that there's a sense of frustration and possibly even resentment that starts to build when you realise that all of that burden is on you. And it's not your fault that it's that way, right? As a mum, we take on, and that's this problem with the perfect mother myth, is we take on the idea that it does need to be us. And until we have kids, we've been raised to be really independent women and we can control and look after everything. We've got ourselves sorted. So it never really occurs to us that we can ask for help, and that asking for help is not actually a sign of failure or weakness. It's a sign of this allows us to have a much more intimate and deep and vulnerable relationship with those around us. Because disengaging from that perfection story that we have allows, our husband or partner to say, well, I can pick up the kids a couple of days a week, or, I can do the groceries or whatever, but we've got this thing where it has to be us.
Yeah.
And that really blocks us from enjoying the fullness of what it means to be a co-parent as well.
Yeah, and I'd say the people who attract to my retreat is the same. That's it's that first process of letting go to be able to have some time out by yourself to even look at your values and what you want, and just allowing partner, husband to take on all those roles over the weekend. And usually do an amazing job of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So maybe tell us a little bit more about your programs and your products that you have.
Yeah, sure. So I have one called The Slow Life. It's like a 3-month group coaching kind of experience. There's 4 modules. And so my 4 pillars of slow living are do less, need less, be more present, and live more aligned. So those are the 4 modules that we take you through. And then we've got some group coaching calls. It's really fun. So it's just all about that same thing, disconnecting from the stories and changing our habits and living a little bit slower. And I started with that program, and I realized that that's very purely like slow living. And I realized that there's a whole other level of things going on with mums. So I made this new program. It's a 3-workshop series called the Martyr to Matriarch Method. And it is a deeper dive into, there's 3 workshops. It's a deeper dive into how all of that burden of motherhood turns us into martyrs. We feel exhausted and resentful and overwhelmed, and we've got so much expectation on what we should be doing. And that sort of stops us from feeling really fulfilled. So there's a process that I take my mums through to help them start to feel like the leader in their family, like that matriarch. Matriarch is can live slow because she sees the value in herself. So it's really about self-worth. And when she lives slow, the whole family benefits.
Yeah, their role model, doesn't it? And that energy just flows on to the family. So with that, the Matriarch program as well, is that part of that? Have you integrated some of the Amy Taylor-Kabaz's work that you did last year as well?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So I'm actually, certified Mama Rising facilitator. Amy Taylor-Kabaz has created this wonderful program, and she takes, it's essentially a process called, we take you through the transformation of motherhood, which we call matrescence. So matrescence is seems like an unfamiliar term, but it's basically the transformation we go through as women when we have a child and become a mother. Same as a teenager goes through adolescence to become an adult, we as women, when we have a child, go through this matrescence process, which is just, it's such a wide ranging transformation. You know, our brain rewires, you know, that's why we get mum brain. So our, you know, from a physical perspective, a social perspective, emotionally, mentally, financially or economically, culturally, we change in so many ways. So yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's she's done an amazing job, and she's got so much language that she gives us around you know, even just the mother versus woman kind of thing. This is called the inner split.
Yep.
Where we feel, and that's mum guilt, right? Where we feel like we need to be successful women, and there's a story around that. And then we've got this story about what a perfect or a good mother is, and how the tension between those two things causes this split within us.
I love, all of her work. That's really helped me through motherhood at the start, is following her so many, 12 years ago now it is actually. My daughter is 12 this year. So I'm sure like adding that into your program as well would just be a beautiful thing for, you know, people with children, new to motherhood, would really greatly benefit. And of course your podcast as well, How to Live Slow, is a great resource for people to tap into. So what about your social media? What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, so mainly Instagram and Facebook and my website. They're all just How to Live Slow. My website's howtoliveslow.com, and then on Facebook I'm at How to Live Slow, and Instagram it's at How to Live Slow as well. And that's what the name of my podcast is. So I've made it really easy to find me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Rachelle, for joining and sharing those tips. I'm sure people will love to connect with you and find those really valuable. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been really fun chatting. So I appreciate it.